Hi, I'm Christine Herman of Herman's Quality Meat Shop in Newark, Delaware. Welcome to my store. We're going to be talking about pork tonight. Are you ready? So here we have an entire pork loin, and this is the rib portion as well as the loin portion. This is pretty much exactly how it comes off the animal, and this is one side of the animal. Just like a human, we have a right side and a left side, and the same thing with the pork or the pig. And in this case, I have one portion, and for this video, I've cut it so that you can see the rib and the loin. And it is nice and fresh, as you can see. So right now, I want to start with the rib portion. And it has a nice little bit of fat cap on it. And here are the baby backs. And I am going to show you a couple things here. One, if we were to cut you chops, we would simply take our knife or our bandsaw and cut in between each of the bones, and you would have a beautiful pork chop, as you would see in this regard here how pretty that looks. I'm just going to scrape that, because whenever you cut bone, you get what we call bone dust. Makes sense, and you would have a beautiful chop. But what I'd like to do tonight is actually show you where the baby backs come from, and that's this portion right here. And I am going to take my knife and follow the bone. What do they say? Children, don't do this at home without adult supervision. Nice sharp knife. I'm just going to follow the bone all the way down. Comes off really nicely and easily. A little extra meat there. Never hurt anybody. For right now, I'm going to set that aside. We'll come back to that. But this is the baby back rib portion, and it's got a nice little amount of meat on it. And if you can see, there is this nice shiny membrane on there, and we're going to take that off. Here at Herman's, we always take this membrane off. You just kind of get your fingernail underneath there and pull. Sometimes it's helpful to use a paper towel or a cloth, but you always want to make sure wherever you're buying your baby backs that this membrane comes off, in my opinion. And the reason why is you can't chew through that, and it becomes actually dangerous and a choking hazard. So that you want to make sure is always gone. So there's your baby back rib. Nice and meaty and amazing. We're going to talk about some cooking instructions in a few minutes when we get back to that. So let's come back to this piece of meat here, which is now the rib portion. And this has a lot of nice marbling fat to it. And I am going to grab my knife. I always like to keep my hands clean. And we're going to trim this up a little bit and take some of this off. Pork is, in my opinion, a very sweet meat. And we can leave it actually just like this, or we can trim a little more of this off, or we could take this little back fat cap off here. Back in the day, and this is a long time ago, there was something, a foodborne parasite, microscopic parasite that used to cause an illness called trichinosis. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before or not, but it was caused by undercooking pork. And anymore, we don't really have that as an issue or a concern anymore. So we're just going to take this off and set that aside as well. And all of this good pork trim right here, that goes in our sausage. Yum. Our pork is locally raised and harvested naturally and very humanely here in the Pennsylvania area. And you know we are in Delaware, so I try and buy as local as possible, and the family farms that I buy from are in the Pennsylvania area. And all of their practices are humane and safe and healthy for the pigs. So there you have a beautiful roast right there. And this can be cooked in a lot of different ways. You can cook it just the way it is. I'm going to tie some strings around it. It can also be butterflied open into a jelly roll, or just butterflied once and stuffed and then rolled and tied also. I had a customer not too long ago ask me to do something interesting, which was basically taking my knife literally and just putting like a hole in the center. And we made a hole all the way through, and they've stuffed it with, I think, like dates and apricots and some different types of fruit. And I thought that was a very interesting twist on cooking the pork. All right, hang on. My string's feisty with me tonight. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this. I'm going to just tie this and show you another presentation that makes the boneless pork roast really nice and easy to cook. You can cook nicely on the grill as well as in the oven. I like to cook pork with my three favorite ingredients, which is olive oil, salt, and pepper, and always garlic. Fresh fennel's another nice ingredient to go with it, as well as rosemary. But there are many, many recipes for pork loin roasts or pork rib roasts as well. This particular piece, before I took the bones off, is also what we would use to make a crown roast of pork. Since I've taken the bones off, we'll save that demonstration for another video. So here you have a beautiful pork roast. Voila. And you always want to make sure you cook pork internal temperature to 145 Fahrenheit. Remember, your probe thermometer has that little dimple. You want to make sure you insert it completely past that dimple. Count to about 15 seconds. Make sure the temperature reads 145. And then once it does, let the meat rest for another couple minutes before you serve it. Okay. The next piece we have is the loin portion. And this is the pork tenderloin right here. And that in itself is a delicacy. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So here is what we would consider, you can see that, this is what we would consider the sirloin end. And this is the center end, because that's the piece that matches or mates with the rib. And when you cut these into chops, at 1-inch chops, you have your tenderloin as well as the sirloin portion, which actually ends up looking like a porterhouse steak if it were beef. And when you get back too far, you have the sirloin end, and you can see this like membrane or sinew in here, and then there's the bone. And that, to me, has a tendency to be a little more chewy. So we typically stop cutting pork chops at about this point so that you have a nice pork chop that you can enjoy. And I can show you for the camera's sake, we've cut some chops here, what they look like, and you probably have seen. And can you see the difference between this and that white dust there? That's that bone dust I was talking about. Whenever you cut bone, you get dust. And you don't want to eat that bone dust. It's fiber we don't need in our diet. So we just nicely scrape that off. We can trim a little bit of this fat if it's necessary. And in this case, it's already well trimmed because that's how our pork comes, and you can see what a lovely pork chop that is. And the same with this one. Some people, some of our customers like us to leave a little bit of that fat on, and others say trim it all off, and we're happy to do whatever the customer likes. So here are some nice pork chops, or the porterhouse steak of the pork, if you will. There you have it, right there. If we were to take the pork tenderloin off, we would have a piece of meat that looks like this. And I am sure many of you are familiar with the pork tenderloin itself. And what we do is we trim it up, take some of this little extra fat, and the pork tenderloin is the fillet of the pig. And you've heard that term as far as beef is concerned, I'm sure. And there's a little bit of membrane there that we like to take off as well. Trim it up for you. We feel that our customers deserve the best all the time, so we always do this for you. There's a little piece in there we like to trim out, clean it up. And there you have your pork tenderloin. This piece is also awesome in many different recipes as well. We can keep this whole. A lot of times customers will pan sear it, or sear it on the grill, and then they'll put it in the oven, finish it in the oven. And it is also versatile to slice thin for medallions or even stir fry, depending upon your recipe. And again, internal temperature, 145. I want to emphasize that. I'd like to go back now for just a moment and talk about my baby back ribs, because I have a recipe that is simple, but delicious. I have a lot of people that ask me, how do you cook your baby backs? Foil, awesome. Makes cleanup very easy. So we take baby backs, a rub, any kind of rub that you like. Let it marinate for anywhere from 15 minutes to overnight if you'd like. You don't need a whole lot. It smells so good. And just rub it in. And then when you're ready to cook it, always cook it with the bone side down. And that creates a natural rack. And I like to put about 1/2 inch of water in the pan or on the foil itself. And that way the meat will actually steam the pork. And I usually cook it for about 45 minutes to an hour on 325 covered. So in this case, I could simply tent it like that and let it steam in the foil as it is, in a dish of course, because that water, you don't want it to dissipate or go away or all over your oven. And once it becomes fork tender, which means you put your fork in and it comes out really easily, or of course 145 with your thermometer, probe thermometer, then you know it's cooked. And at that point, then you want to uncover it, and you want to put your barbecue sauce on it if you choose to, and either turn the broiler on or put it on the grill at that point. And then you'll turn over and do both sides. And my preference is oftentimes the broiler, just because if I'm cooking in the evenings, I'm not an outside griller at night, but that's just me. So if you grill anytime, day or night, or winter or summer, have at it. But that's my my cooking tip for you there. I hope that was helpful. And I want to talk now, take a breath. I want to talk now to you about my kitchen tip today, which is simply how to shop with confidence. When you go to a store, you want to know what you're buying and where you're buying it from. And although, yes, you would like to know that you're buying from a store like mine where you become part of the family and we can become friends and family and you're always confident. However, that's not always possible when you go into a grocery store or somewhere else. And you want to know that you're going into a store that's not only reputable, because most stores are, and of course that's not what I'm really talking about here, but I'm talking about when you shop, you want to make sure that you're buying products that you can trust and count on. You want to look at things that you're buying. Try not to be, if you can, not to be in a hurry. You want to be able to inspect the packages, making sure that cans aren't really dented or packages aren't dirty or really wet, and make sure that they're properly sealed if they should be sealed, other than like produce that you're hand selecting yourself, for example. Something else that's really important is when you're buying produce and things that are cold, you want to make sure you keep them cold. And foods that are hot, if you're buying from the hot bar, you want to keep those hot items aside from the cold items or your produce so that they're not commingling and creating any circumstances that might create bacteria. It's always a good idea, especially I know in Delaware where we are, they encourage you to bring your own bags. And keeping an insulated bag such as our Herman's bag is really handy, because you can, when you package, you can put your cold items in there and then your hot items in a separate packaging. And that's also very important as well. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is to make sure you check things like expiration dates and sell-by dates. Make sure you have enough time on the products that you're buying to use them in a proper time frame. And we're going to talk more about this in another video. But right now, that's where I want to stop, and I hope that was helpful information. Thank you very much. Pork is one of my favorite meats. It's mild, it's tender, and it's flavorful. And it lends itself very well to a lot of different cooking methods as well as seasonings and rubs. In this video, we talked about the pork loin, chops, tenderloin, roast, and my favorite, the baby back ribs. I hope that you will subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and join our family. Thank you. Christine Herman.